Welcome in, Slumpbusters. It is your host, Juju Talk Sports, and of course by Kyle Ledbetter, and continuing our NBA coverage. We're staying in the Eastern Conference, and I am welcoming on a very special guest, Jon Zaghloul of Sports Talk Chicago, to tell us everything about these Bulls. Now, we were supposed to do this a couple weeks ago, and I have a feeling, Jon, you would have preferred to talk about the Bulls a couple weeks ago, not talking about them right now that they're on a 5-game slide. How are you doing today, man?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, and I agree. But the good thing is everything's being shown now, right? I'd rather them lose 5 straight games now than, potentially in the playoffs versus a pretty good Eastern Conference opponent.
Yeah, I mean, they obviously are going to face a lot of good opponents here in the Eastern Conference. In fact, that brings up the first big question I want to throw your way. So the Bulls, unfortunately, are 0-14 against the top 3 seeds in both the Western and Eastern Conference. Now, I've been looking at the Bulls as contenders, but how can you be a contender if you're not even contending against the best teams in either conference?
That's a great point. And they're actually 2-14 against teams with a 600 winning percentage or better. Make that even worse. I've always considered the Bulls a contender based on how they've done until about 3 or 4 weeks ago. But at this point, I'm having serious questions as to how serious a contender they are at this point. If you're going to be facing off and not beating these teams that you should at least be competitive with, that's pretty not good, to be honest with you. It's a little bit scary to say the least. I would hope that, over these next couple of weeks, the more they get healthy, maybe they could compete more in these games and win. I think that's a big problem. The fact that they are beat up, Alex Caruso, Lonzo Ball, they don't have their true point guard. Guys have stepped up. Kobe White before he got hurt. Ayo Dosunmu's been probably a revelation for this team, and that's been something nice to see, the steal of the draft. But the fact is they're beat up, and then even when they've been relatively healthy, they haven't beaten these good teams. And it's going to be a problem when you get to the playoffs, right? I mean, you're going to be facing the best of the best. You're going to be a 1-6 seed, assuming maybe 1-4 if you're the Bulls. So it's going to come down to matchup for them in the playoffs and as to how far they're going to go. But then again, when you're 2-14 against teams with a 600 or better winning percentage, that's certainly cause for concern.
So I wanted to ask you about Demar Derozan because I've found his story this year to be one of the most fascinating in the NBA, because I remember when we were in the bubble in 2020, it felt like he was kind of falling out of love with San Antonio. It was maybe he's going to get traded or waived, and it was kind of a little bit of a quagmire season last year there. And now all of a sudden he's averaging 28 a game. He's shooting over 50%. He's been this incredible number one option for a really good Bulls team. So I ask you, what have you seen this year that's been fascinating about DeRozan? I will take any chance to slander the Spurs and how they treated my man Kawhi Leonard at the end. So if you would like to do that also, I'm just more petty in that way. And what has happened with DeMar DeRozan this season?
Well, I want to say this. I think it's worth noting he wasn't by any means bad or unproductive in San Antonio, first and foremost. I mean, the guy still averaged 20-plus points per game the past 2 years, and that was pretty much on par with Toronto. A little bit of a dip, but not too far of a dip from his first couple of years with the Raptors. So I want to make sure we say that first. So it's not that he was bad. It's not that, he was completely unproductive. It's just that here in Chicago, he's gotten more of an opportunity. He is the de facto number one here. Him and Zach Levine work well as a 1A, 1B type of situation. They play well off of each other. Then when you are fully healthy and you have guys like Lonzo Ball, Alex Caruso defensively, Nikola Vucevic pulling down some rebounds, although his rebounding skill has certainly found criticism. But when you have those pieces around you, you're able to focus more on what you do best. And, for DeRozan, it's a mid-range game, and it's scoring the frickin' basketball. It's, driving in. It's being the center of an offense. On San Antonio, I think the problem was no supporting cast, or not much of a supporting cast. I mean, you're talking about the years after their dynasty, their dynastic run. I mean, Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, all these guys are gone. You got a bunch of has-beens. Kawhi Leonard's gone. And you got DeMar DeRozan there. You got Greg Popovich, older school coach, not necessarily big on offense or singular scorer compared to somebody like Billy Donovan, who's dealt with it for a number of years, both in the NBA and at the college level. It's just it's a different philosophy. You got different supporting cast, good players around him that allow him to get more of an opportunity. But I still think, considering the situation he was in San Antonio, I'll take 20 points per game all day from him. That said, here, when you have the right pieces around you, when you got Zach frickin' Levine helping you out and you're going to put up 28, it's certainly going to make a difference to me.
Speaking of Zach Levine, so Zach Levine, most of his time in Chicago, obviously, like you mentioned, has been disappointing. This is the first year that the Bulls are really doing anything in Zach Levine's era with them. And Zach Levine's coming up to the contract negotiating table in this offseason, whether the Bulls win or whether the Bulls don't. whether they're competing or whether they're not. It's time for him to get paid out there in Chicago. Now, have the Bulls done enough this season, or is there still ways to go for them to really convince Zach that this is a place you can win a title, Zach? This is a place that you can be a star of a elite level franchise? Or do you think that the previous 4 years of Zach's time in Chicago probably ruined that?
I think the 4 years don't really matter. I think he's certainly forgotten about it because the team is completely different. There's no more Jim Boylan or Lauri Markkanen or a bunch of scrubs, for lack of a better term, running this team and coaching this team. They've obviously done a lot to prove that they're going to be a destination franchise for not just Zach Levine, but for other free agents in the years to come. They have a new coach, new front office, good front office. Arturas Karnisovas and Mark Eversley have done an outstanding job. I mean, think about this for a second. There's only one original guy, or two really, who's on the roster that they inherited, Kobe White and Zach Levine. Everybody else is new. Everybody else was not here under Garpax, the Garpax regime, and under Jim Boylan. So I think the Bulls have shown that at least they're willing to make changes to suit a winning culture, which is something Zach Levine needs. The real problem, I think, is going to be this past month and what they do in the playoffs. If the Bulls are like a first-round elimination, I think that's going to play big into how Zach Levine considers where he wants to go next year and also the contract he demands. This team has to go at least somewhat deep. They have to win a playoff series to prove to everybody, hey, we're going in the right direction. If they get swept or if they lose first round, I don't care who the opponent is either. I mean, you got to beat the good teams. That's why you're in the postseason. So no matter who the opponent is, if you can't win, to me, there's no justification as to, we're a winning team, we're much better now. You could do great in the regular season. You could be 39-26. We were the 1 seed in the Eastern Conference at one point. But the fact remains, you got to win in the postseason. We haven't seen it yet. And the fact that they're 0-13 against the top 3 seeds in the East, that's very scary to me. So if you want to prove you're a winning team, then hell, win. You want to prove you're a winning team, win. Beat the good teams and win. And that's what you're going to prove to Zach Levine and every other free agent out there. Come this summer, that you're a destination franchise for years to come.
So it sounds like the expectation for the Bulls is the second round of the playoffs this year, going from obviously a lottery team in the past few years. It sounds like second round is what they're shooting for.
I mean, that'd be fine with me personally. That's just my expectation. I would hope for even more, better expectation from the team itself. I mean, they're going to tell you, oh, we won a championship. Well, let's be real here. They're not winning a championship. But I would think second round, you win a first round playoff series. You played a game 7 in the second round. To me, that's a success considering where they were. We're talking about only a year and a half ago did Karnisovas and Eversley take over. That was right at the beginning of the coronavirus, March of 2020. And we're sitting here 2 years later then. And they're at this position. I would call that a great success already for Karnisovas and for Eversley. And I think now, though, it's time for the next step. If you're going to be 39-26, if you were the number 1 seed at one point in this conference, getting to the playoffs is not going to cut it. Last year, I remember a lot of people said, hey, the Bulls made this trade midseason to get Vucevic. If they just make it in, get a play-in game, it's a success. And they didn't make it at all. And that was a big disappointment. This year, there should be no, maybe if they get in, they lose the first round, it's okay. They have to win at least a playoff series. If they get to the Eastern Conference Finals or anything further, that's a huge success. I think that's pretty much unexpected. But if they don't win at least one series, I would call it a disappointment. Yes, you made all these moves. You've spent a decent amount of money. You acquired Demar Derozan, who's an MVP candidate as we talk today. There should be no reason why you can't win in the first round of the Eastern Conference, especially if you're going to be a top 6 seed, which is what it looks like it's going to be for them.
Now, we're talking about this losing streak. Obviously, it's been doom and gloom the last week, but some positive news. So literally breaking news today, Alex Caruso has been cleared for contact. That is mirrored by their other injury situation of another star, Lonzo Ball. Lonzo Ball did not get as shiny of a injury report as he's expected to miss some additional time. Apparently, he's struggling with lateral movement on that meniscus injury. He hasn't played since January 20th. How have the Bulls really managed their rotations with these two gone? And what added boost will they bring when they come back?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, Ayo Dosunmu, who I mentioned earlier, in my opinion, has been the steal of the entirety of the NBA draft for 2021. Second round pick, a star at Illinois. They got eliminated way too early. They choked in the NCAA tournament, plain and simple. But Ayo did a good job at showing that no matter what, regardless of that result, he was a quality prospect and a player coming into the NBA. To me, it still kind of boggles my mind as to why he dropped all the way to the second round. But I'll take 8 points, 3 boards, or 3 assists, 3 boards. Not bad considering this guy doesn't even start half the time. 60 games, 26 games played. He stepped up, decent defender, good passer, good eyes with the basketball, only going to get better. Those stats don't sound great if you're just looking at the numbers. If you're not watching the games, you think, okay, like who the hell's Ayo? Am I pronouncing his name right? First of all. Secondly, who the hell is Ayo? But he's done some really good things in the Bulls uniform, had a couple of nice games, had a triple-double already as a rookie. He's only going to get better. That's been really helpful, especially with Lonzo Ball gone. You lose your true point guard, and the Bulls really don't have another one. Kobe White is going to be transitioning into a number 2, kind of a shooting guard type player, not really a point guard. They tried that. It didn't work. So you're kind of left with nothing, and Ayo certainly picked up the slack, and that's been great. Derrick Jones Jr. has been good off the bench as well. He's done some good things for them, filled in when needed. They got Tristan Thompson, too, recently. Not a bad pickup, in my opinion. Need somebody else to rebound and be big in that 4 or 5 spot when Nikola Vucevic is having rebounding problems. So they brought in guys to reinforce what's happened. The problem is they're just not as powerful no matter what. They're not going to be as good as they are fully healthy. And when Lonzo Ball comes back, well, your point guard comes back. Then you could start dishing the ball out better. Ball was doing great, 13 points, 5 boards, 5 assists per game. I'll take that all day long as well. When he comes back, that'll be great. Caruso, defensive presence, stone cold defender, came off the bench. It did work wonders for the Bulls. So these are guys that when they come back, it's certainly going to help. But they've had some guys who've stepped up and have made things manageable without Ball and Caruso being there.
So I have argued that the Bulls and Celtics would be a really fun first round matchup because I feel like both teams relatively evenly matched, both have 25 a game scorers, but no one that we really look at as like Durant or Giannis type of game changing player. I thought the Heat would be fun also for them to match up with. Is there anyone that you think would be fun to watch the Chicago Bulls play 7 games against?
I mean, personally, I want them to face the weakest potential opponent to make it into the next round. But I think those two would be great series. I think the Heat would be a great series. But to be honest with you, I think the Heat, if they're fully healthy, could probably win playoff series. Maybe, we'll go to a game 7. But, Bam Adebayo is doing great. I know he was injured earlier this year. Duncan Robinson's starting to turn it on a little bit. They have a pretty good team, and I think it'd be an even match. But I think in the end, the Bulls would lose. Celtics are interesting. But I think, again, the problem is this 7-game thing. The Bulls could win and they could beat anybody they want, 1 game here, 1 game there. I think when you get to a series and you talk about those 2 teams and really anybody else above them at this point, it's going to be a real challenge for them to win 4, right? To win 4 out of 7 or to, win 4 and 6. It's going to be a challenge. And if the Bulls were healthy, fully healthy, I'd say maybe a different answer. I mean, I think this team, when they're fully healthy, could easily beat anybody when it comes to a round 1 opponent. And, if they're going to be a top 4 team and they face the 5 or they face one of the playing teams who makes it, I think that shouldn't be a problem. But if they're not healthy, if Lonzo Ball's still hurt, if Caruso barely makes it back in time or he's not ready for game play yet, it's going to be a really close situation. And it could come to a point where they might lose. And that's going to be unfortunate, considering, again, what the expectations are and how much money they put into this team and the moves they've manufactured in the offseason to get to this point. We're going to have to wait and see where they stand. But if they're not fully healthy, I really think if they did face the Celtics or the Heat, they might go down at 7 games in the first round or second round.
Jon Zaghloul, Sports Talk Chicago, thank you so much for joining us here today. John, first off, I also have to tell you, congratulations, got a shiny new college degree. How's that going? Like, you're free now. You get to embrace post-grad life. You ready for that?
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, hey, thank you. We'll see what happens. As you guys know, I'll still be doing Sports Talk Chicago. You guys could find that anywhere. We're going to see what happens, but it does feel pretty nice to not have to write 4 or 5 papers. I had 3 papers for my finals, and then I had a presentation. It was certainly long, and it's been a long 4 years. But it's great to come home at night, go to bed and not stay up all night working on papers or working on senseless homework. So I'm happy about that.
Congratulations. It's only downhill from here. All right, guys, go check out John. All things you need to see, Sports Talk Chicago, Slumpbuster podcast. That's us. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button from Juju Talk Sports and Kyle Ledbetter. Stay safe, happy, and healthy. We'll see you next time.